to some of the dialogue here is around the margins, which I think are going to be pretty challenged going into 2023. I think, the price cuts make sense as a near term delivery push. Um, I feel like the demand, to the extent it's been impacted by some of Elon's antics, you'd expect that along with the backlog to really begin seeing the impact in like Q1, Q2. And I feel like if there was a pretty negative scenario coming out, it's kind of like this is how I would see it probably materializing. I mean, there's just a lot of challenges for the stock. The other thing that I kind of think about with this business from a margin perspective is that the last couple of years have been a really great time to be selling cars. The other unique dynamic for Tesla is that they're a direct to consumer model. If you look at auto dealerships and how they've performed over the last couple of years, they've actually been, you know, the most profits per vehicle ever by a wide margin. They like tripled in 2021 versus like 2018. That means that, you know, those are going to kind of unwind as the recession hits, as the supply chain issues unwind. And I feel like Tesla is more exposed to that unwind than most other auto manufacturers are. So you'll expect to see a decline in the gross profit for vehicles for Tesla that's higher than what you see from other auto manufacturers. And then the last question for the group, because I've been, something of an FSD bear as well. And I see a lot of the positive comments. I see a lot of the zero engagement videos, which all seem good, but I would be curious to get people's perspectives on when actual robo taxis may materialize. I know that was something that we were talking about a couple years ago, but now it's not really a part of the discussion. Like, one question as a part of that is, what does the regulatory process look like? Like, when are we actually going to see that happen somewhere? What needs to occur from a regulatory perspective? And just like, I know it's a hard question to answer, but we've been talking about robotaxis for a long time. Like, when do we think we actually see that, even in some kind of pilot format?
Yeah, so I think you bring up some good points. I mean, the auto business has been very strong. We've had a shortage and it's been a very good situation. Now we're looking at coming into a little bit of a tougher situation. So you would expect margins to be pressured a little bit, but Tesla also has a lot of opportunities. Elon has said some of their costs are coming down, and this will probably be a better environment to operate in overall. Although it was easy to sell cars for a high price, on the supply side, things were just a nightmare. So nobody really wanted that situation to continue forever. And I think software will sort of help with that. On the robotaxi thing, people are just sort of getting the software on their cars for the first time and really putting it through the paces, throwing everything at it that they see in the real world. This software is now seeing millions and millions of miles of data, and it's making tons and tons of mistakes and having disengagements, and they're sending that data, they're refining it to software. When the robotaxis come and when Tesla software is ready for it, it won't be a secret because everybody will know, everybody will be reporting on it. This is something that's widely available now. And you can actually go to Chandler, Arizona and ride in a Waymo robotaxi. Anybody, it's open to the public. Cruise is now letting a fair amount of people into their beta program of their driverless service, which operates in the night in San Francisco, which, even though it's only 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., San Francisco, that I think is an accomplishment. So these companies have really, although they haven't really, it's a money losing business. They haven't achieved scale. It's very much sort of at the lab phase, not a great business, but they've sort of laid out a roadmap for how you do this. And I've ridden in both of the services a number of times, and they've shown that it's actually very possible. So the first thing you have to do is just sort of not go anywhere where there's an issue. You map out the whole area that you're operating in, and you sort of test every street. And if there's any issue, you just simply don't go there. So the car only needs to sort of have one route. And in the cruise car, for example, they'll take a route that's much longer if they think it's actually an easier route for the car. And then, you can limit the speed at first to a lower speed, maybe 30 miles an hour. You can limit the hours of service. Cruise did 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. in San Francisco where there's very little traffic. So you can do driverless today. It's just a question of how many limitations you put on the service. And I think in the next, I mean, I don't know. People have been so wrong about predicting driverless for some time. But I think you're seeing major products launch, and in the next 12 to 24 months, there's going to be a lot of action in this space.
I actually have an interesting conversation. So I had with some of um, our city regulators here. So I originally was from Southern Utah. We just moved back. I grew up in Idaho, and you'd think Idaho is probably one of the last places where they would think any type of autonomous driving would be a thing. I'm not a farmer by any means, but it actually got brought up recently. So there's a lot of autonomous farming equipment that has actually been really becoming popular. So farmers don't have to go out and get in their tractors. They can just go and do all their crops right from their app. And I kid
Deere
you not, the other day,
Deere is doing some cool things, but continue.
yeah, no, there's some really cool stuff going on. The other day, I kid you not, I saw there was a tractor that a farmer, was outside of, and he was going forward through a road, controlling from his phone. And so there were some issues because again, this is autonomous. It was going on a road, and so the whole conversation I got into the city councilwoman was they needed regulation to pass in this podunk part of Idaho that I'm a part of, where they're actually now passing autonomous laws for equipment to be able to go on city streets, and again, just for farming purposes. So it would be I'd be amiss to say, well, look, I have FSD. If the tractor can go on the roads by itself, my car should be able to too. It's just it's an interesting thing. I think there's a lot more opportunities with people seeing the possibility for the future. That's not just driving. I mean, so many industries need autonomous, and I just think there's a lot of opportunity there. So yeah, governments are on board, at least from where I'm standing.
I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to Dan O'Dowd's video with a kid in the cornfield.
yeah. I
Oh
I
god.
think I think if you look at like Chat GPT or Stable Diffusion or Dolly, where you type in, okay, I want a picture of Gurgavin surfing, eating a cheeseburger, and it can just draw that. And you're like, what the fuck? How the hell did this AI system just make that image in less than a minute? And you talk to Chat GPT and you say, hey, what was that episode of Scrubs where they said this? And they go, oh yeah, that was season 3, episode 4. And you're like, what the hell? How does this AI work? Like, there's truly amazing things happening in AI in all these fields. And it's really sort of at a point where it just blows your mind in terms of, I did not imagine that this was possible. And it's a paradigm shift in software. For the first few decades of software, all the software we've used has been humans writing instructions for the computer. But now we've figured out a new paradigm. With the internet and large-scale data collection of all this data, billions and billions of people worth of data, we said, well, what if we can program software just by watching us? So ChatGPT is just trained by reading in the entire internet, everything we've all written, right? That's where it gets all its knowledge. And they just said, just predict the next character. Just predict the next character that's more most likely to occur based on everything you've read. And it produces this amazing result. That's essentially the core of it. So it's a similar thing with FSD. People think, oh, they sort of have to figure this out, but they don't realize how much of it is just people driving, catching the mistakes, sending it back, retraining until the system just achieves insane levels of reliability. And yeah, self-driving is just the beginning. Self-driving is probably, $1 trillion on its own, but it's just one leaf on the forest of AI. It's it's a, transformational force as big as the personal computer, the World Wide Web, or the smartphone, in my opinion.
I thought you were going to keep going on with that forest reference at the end there, Omar. No, that was fantastic. We got a bunch more people up here as well. Before we do go to anyone else, I want to remind people Homar's blog, a fantastic Twitter account. If you like Tesla, if you hate Tesla and want somewhere where all the Tesla bulls are and to tweet at them, that is the place to go and do it. Make sure you're following his account. A fantastic follow. Also, shout out to my co host up here, Gert Gavin. If you guys didn't hear when the numbers came out, you'll go back to hear the recording and you'll hear him dancing on all our graves. But We appreciate them joining in, and
What did I say though? I forgot.
we got to go back and listen to it. We'll get the recording soon.
I don't
But
think he was dancing on our graves too much. I think he was just excited that it was just so much different than expectations. Because with a
I
number,
think,
it's
yeah,
expectations. It's just kind of like, okay, expectations. When it's different, then it's like, oh shit. I think everyone's going to be watching Tesla tomorrow. Is curious to see how it reacts. A lot of people are watching this production and delivery number. So it certainly is, eventful. I think if, maybe it was just 420,000, there wouldn't be as much to talk about here.
that I do agree with. I'm a news
So
guy, so I'm
you
definitely
should
in
be
that boat.
happy, stock Evan. We had a big miss. I mean, if we had a big beat, my reaction would have been pretty similar. If we print this for 40, for 50.
I'm gonna make sure to tweet it out or get the recording or whatever so we can hear it. I think there was some bear exuberance in there. We can move on because I don't think we can't prove anything until we get the recording. It's like those commercials. I don't know if you guys are seeing the red flag being thrown, but we'll be able to throw that soon. But human human lawyer hybrid.
Hey, yeah, I like Tesla, and been an investor and following them for a long time. But this is not good news, and I, it's particularly bad for management's credibility because they need to show that they'll get out ahead of bad news and be straight with investors. And they've been insisting there's no demand softness. They keep trying to attribute it to this unwinding of the wave. They did that on the Q3 call. Even Martin's tweet today, same thing. But it's clearly not. This is. I mean, it's growth. It's great, but 40% is not just under 50%. I mean, that's a big miss. And this year's probably going to be a difficult year, and there's clearly issues with demand in China. And this is after they pulled out all the stops with incentives. It's not the end of the world. I'm not saying the sky is falling, but you want a management team that's going to tell you when they see trouble on the horizon, and that's going to not just tell you that it's going to be an epic fourth quarter and everything's great and we're going to be the most valuable company in the world. That's not a good look in a quarter in which the CEO and CFO went and sold a fairly significant amount of stock. I mean, Elon sold, I can't remember how much was in the fourth quarter, but several $billion worth of stock. And then Zach Kirkhorn sold, and then they deliver a unit volume delivery miss. It's a really bad look, and it's not the end of the world, maybe, but this is how it
So
starts to
in
fall
the
apart.
last 3 months, Insiders dumped 7.5 billion in Tesla equity.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you should have come to our spaces because I think Elon was pretty frank about what was going on. I think it was fairly easy to predict that the numbers weren't going to be great if you really listened to his comments there. So, I mean, what is epic? I mean, I think given everything, 440,000 cars produced and 405,000 is more than they've ever produced before. We all know about everything that's going on. We know about interest rates. We know about the situation in China that's happening. All things considered, they can't control everything. Obviously a lot of shareholders are frustrated, especially with the Twitter deal and all that. But he said that sort of his goal was to just sort of get things on even footing where you wouldn't have to sell for, at least until 2025. So hopefully, he's going to stick to that. I tend to believe him, even though a lot of people say, oh, he said that before. Um, I think they have gotten the house in order at Twitter, and he shouldn't need a ton more cash to keep it going from now on. It should be able to sustain itself. And all things considered, 40% growth versus 50% growth would have been good to be over 50. Yeah. But you look at the compound annual growth rate over 2 years and it's 62% or something like that. So this year they were a little under 50. Last year they were way over 50. You know what? Recessions happen sometimes. There's down cycles. When interest rates go up, not everyone wants to take out an expensive car loan at that moment. So it happens. That's the nature of the business. But I think if your takeaway on this is all just this, that, I think that's the key takeaway, is that the sky isn't falling, right? If we had delivered like, let's say 300,000 cars, that would have been really bad, right? Or even if we had delivered, let's say, 390,000 or something, I think that would have been perceived very badly, because they're really supposed to be, you know, getting close to five. They're close to a run rate now of 2 million cars a year. So I think hitting above the 400,000 number for the first time, if you're an investor, then okay, it's a miss, which is not what you want to see. But if you're just looking at it as a spectator, this is an amazing growth story that we've never seen before, where even in a recession, they're growing 40% year over year. And you look at Honda's down 30% year over year, okay? So you do the math, because this is sort of what's been happening over the last 2 years. You keep growing your sales 40%, and the competition sales keep going down 30%. Eventually, you meet in the middle and you end up becoming higher volume than them. And this is a pretty dramatic transformation. This was like a niche automaker. Let's not forget, they've never produced a million cars in a single calendar year before. This is the first time it's happened. So they were seen as sort of a joke. People laughed at them. Oh, they're just this little niche brand from California nobody cares about. All of a sudden, they're they've put their big boy pants on. They now have the capacity to make more than 2 million cars in 2023. They could outsell Mercedes Benz. Not outsell Mercedes Benz on EVs, which they've already done several times over. Outsell them on total cars as a pure EV company, building out a supply chain that doesn't even exist. You know, I mean, sure, you can be there's, if you want to complain, you could complain for an hour about all the things Elon tweeted or all the things you're unhappy about. But zooming out, I think the big takeaway is the sky isn't falling, right? How bad was it going to be in light of all these recessionary factors, all these headwinds? Well, it was a miss, but they still grew 40%. So, all things considered, it's not the end of the world.